to the show now. The weather may have changed in the past few days, but no doubt with the sunshine we've had all month, it has encouraged many people to dust off the summer barbecue and get grilling.
Yes, because the barbecues are coming out, but Shane Lahan, our folklorist, is here now, and he's going to take us back to the earliest barbecue days. Shane, this is so interesting. Tell us about it.
Well, you know, you think about the barbecue now. We think, you know, there's people have gas barbecues and charcoal barbecues, and there's decking outside, and there's a place. You would think that it was always there and ever in people's houses, you know.
Like people are like there on their verandas doing
this. I'd say 40 years ago, if someone said you were getting charcoal or something, they wouldn't know what you were
you're right.
You know, so it's a fairly modern sort of concept, if you like. So I was looking back to time, I was thinking, you know, one thing I think about a barbecue is that no matter how much the women are cooking and so on, once you go outdoors, the men take over.
They do.
You know?
That's so true.
There's no doubt about it at all. Like, and you know, she could be preparing all the food and everything, but he's in charge of the fire. Like, he's in charge of all of that sort of thing. So, but it's interesting when we go right back into Ireland's past. We have another outdoor cooking expression, if you like, which goes right back into our Bronze Age. And when I talk about the Bronze Age, I'm talking about 1,500 years BC or thereabouts. And these are what we call the Fulacht Fiadh. Now the word Fulacht in Irish, it's a lovely, when I'm telling my students this, Fulacht, it sounds like boiling, you know, that sort of idea. And what you have is you have an area which is wet, usually with lots of wet material and so on there. You will dig a trough into the ground.
So maybe near a well somewhere.
Yeah, well, you know, it's kind of where the water table is high. And what happens is you line it, usually with a bit of stone or a bit of wood, as you can see in this example here, and that will naturally fill with water. And what that gives you then is it gives you the opportunity to heat that water. And these are some photographs and some images I have. My students and myself back out on the Tremor campus, we lined this pit, we dug it. The students say, you know, I always get them working hard.
Yeah,
Here
certainly do.
Digging away. We got this wooden trough that we made up and we placed it inside. And then we built our fire, okay? And we built our fire from hardwood that was there, and we put some stones. In the accounts that we have of this, the stone should be the size of a baby's head. I always remember that. So I'd be looking around. Maybe made of granite, if you can get it. Limestone isn't great. Sandstone are...
Oh, really? Granite because it's tougher, isn't it?
It's granite is tougher. And what happens is when it hits the water, there's this incredible sound. You know, it's amazing. It's like a whoosh sound. Sometimes it's so cold, it shatters, you know. And what happens is you add in stone after stone, and within about a half an hour to 35 minutes, a full, if you like, nearly 1,000 litres of water will actually come to the boil.
How long did you leave the stones for to heat them, Shane?
About, I'd say we left in for about an hour and a half, okay, until they're kind of white hot. That's very important. In fact, they were so hot, Maura, we couldn't get near the fire. We had to make this long shovel.
Oh, the thing was emanating, was it?
Oh, it was incredible. The students were dousing themselves in water, you know, doing all sorts of things. Health and safety wasn't great that day, but that's another
Nobody was hurt, though.
No.
But in the Bronze Age, there wasn't a lot of that either.
But what happened is this, okay? The water is bubbling, and in fact, you could control it. There was a rolling boil that was there.
So it's like a geyser.
So you had what was ready then is that you were now could go cooking. And what I love about that is that we looked at the water and you wouldn't put anything into it because it was full of ash, it was full of charcoal, it was full of all those sort of things. So there was another thing that we were in the historical accounts, and that is that you got sugan, the straw. Sometimes you would wind that around the meat. That would protect the meat then from the direct contact with the dirty water that was there.
Keep all the bad stuff out.
Keep all the bad stuff out. But on top of that, Dahi, straw will give you kind of a sweetness. There was a kind of a flavour. There was a hay inside that. And that's part of what was there. And what I love about this is that nothing has changed very much, okay? 20 minutes to the pound and 20 minutes over. That was just that's going back as far as the Bronze Age, that sort of idea.
So in the Bronze Age, they used to build these, and that was their way. And they even knew then, as their records to go back, to know that putting the wood in, they were almost smoking the meat.
Well, what was happening is that I think it's the opposite to smoking. I think this is what's really important, okay? Because the barbecue for me is what we love now, caramelized, smoky, all of that sort of flavour that's there. But in this case, it's the opposite to that. It's not smoky, it's not caramelized, it's just the meat itself in that boiled sense. We used venison. Ella, one of my pals at work, her husband Paul, went away. he gave us a piece of venison. Look at it was.
So this
was
is the venison you
Oh
cooked?
yeah, we cooked that in the Fulacht Fiadh out in
That's
the Truro
very
campus.
impressive.
How long did it take to cook that?
Well, 20 minutes to the pound and 20 minutes
sure.
over dahi. And what
Yeah.
happened is it was eaten in about 20 seconds because it was, and we flavoured it. We flavoured
And was
it
it
with,
tender, Shane, because of the water?
it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. And we flavoured it with the lovely alliums, the Babington's leeks that are out, the Garlogue out in the Iron Islands. We took some of the ramsons, the wild garlic that was there. It was just incredible. So for me, and this is the important point, that we have 10,000 of these Fulacht Fiadhs, if not more.
And did you find these Fulacht Fiadhs around? Can you see them still?
You can still see them. And what happens is, when you're driving in the car and you can see up in a field and a big spread of charcoal, often a big black area after they ploughing and so on.
Yeah.
That's usually where the Fulacht Fiadh has been. Other places have the little square indentation, and around them, you see what happened is when they were finished, they cleared out the Fulacht Fiadh. We have in archaeology what we call a throw zone, and there was this lovely, if you like, horseshoe shape around the area. So that's how we see them on the landscape.
Could you explain the name again for us?
Okay. So Fulacht is to boil. But Fiadh is first of all wild in the wilderness.
That's right, wild.
It's also Fian, which is a deer, like venison. But also the Fianna, who are the Fionn McCool and Gun Macmora and Quilca and all the lads. They were ones, the cooking place of the Fianna, if you like, in that way. So that was a kind of a name that was given to them. But there was more than just then cooking, okay? Because one of the things is when the Fianna themselves were told in the legends, when they were finished, they used to kind of strip off, and they were using the steam that was coming off the Fulacht Fiadh and the kind of obviously we spoke about soap before. They were washing themselves off and admiring themselves while the meat was cooking and so on. So there's that notion as well to the whole thing, the sauna type of steam bath that
like
was
the Romans almost.
Also as well, if you killed an animal like that, the tanning of the skins might have been used. I have a great idea that we find these Fulacht Fiadhs at the seashore as well. So maybe for even making salt, because you have the salt water, you put in the stones, they would dissolve down. The salinity of that, you could get crystallized salt. We also have shellfish, of course, using it for periwinkles.
So if they did that close to the shore, they could just get the kind of calamari, those razor fish and all that, literally in the sand.
That's it. And the great anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss, le cru et le cuit, the raw and the cooked. You think about it, look at what happens from when we cook something and when we have it raw. We take out all the badness, it aid the digestive system. This is the big change that happens that brings us into the civilization and culture that we have today. This is colossal in terms of its importance in our
Of course it is,
development.
everything was raw before that in one sense.
And you can think of, we started cooking, we started boiling eggs out in the college, we were trying it. We poached the salmon when we were out there. If we were any good, we'd have got maybe some
Tell us about this. This is the you put the quiche on straight in.
We put the old quiche on. So my students are great because they come up with the ideas, and that's what I love. That this is experimental archaeology. From like the sounds, the smells, the tastes. You don't get that when
it's bringing them back, you see, to the times.
And having that experience is what makes the pursuit of the past most interesting.
Do they cook vegetables or anything there?
Yeah. So like when the vegetables you and I think of today didn't exist in the past, but you could take burdock roots, or you could even take fruit. Take for example, for a moment for me, apples, crab apples, okay? If you were to boil up the crab apples, you can make what we call a leather, which was a kind of a dried apple, and you leave that air dried in, and that's storable and manageable, and it goes from being tart to being sweet, all of that. So we think that all of these processes that we don't really understand today, we need to start experimenting and looking at what life was like in the past.
And did you find when you look back as archaeologists that in the Bronze Age people were able to do that? So it's almost like stored food on the go, which would give you energy. If you think of fruit, you've got a lot of carbohydrate, so that's the energy if you're hunting or whatever to go.
I think the Fulacht Fiadh are interesting because of that, because they were masters of heat. You must remember that, you can imagine the smelting of the bronze and all of that. They could manage and control heat, and now they're transferring that technology to the preservation of food, to cooking, to all of those sort of things as well. They also brought in cauldrons. And cauldrons were very interesting in early Ireland because later on in the Iron Age period and into that period, you put all your animals into the cauldron, boiled them up. If you were the best in the group, you had your flesh fork, you went in, Dahi, you were the king, you took yours, next with Mora. But if you were number 99 in the list, there was nothing left when you came back.
An ear, maybe.
And you might get something. And if you got nothing, it meant you were no bloody good. So the idea
Hierarchy.
of the hierarchy is reflected in the joint of meat that you get.
Yeah,
you know?
I remember the only barbecuing we used to do when we were young, years ago. I don't know if you ever did it when you toasted bread by the fire with a
Yes.
fork.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
Because we didn't have a toaster when we
No,
were
yeah. No.
So that was the kind of barbecue where we
Yeah.
started, and your hand would be red raw, and the fork would be on fire as well.
True.
And you'd be trying to get a bit of colour on the bread, like.
Oh my
It's
God.
gas, but you know, I love that idea of recreating
Yeah.
the past,
Yeah.
and I love the opportunity to do that.
And doing it, as you
Solid
said,
things.
physically and getting the smells and the scents of the past.
The big old cauldron that I love as well, I think about, is because we're in new potato season at the moment.
yes.
The new potatoes are just coming out now, and you know, you'd want a big old pot now for the gang, and you put the spuds into it and boil it up, and you know that would come out on top of the table.
And two big elbows.
Up on top of the oilcloth, and you'd be eating away, and the pot would have to go onto the range again for the next pot of spuds.
Yeah.
You know?
Brilliant.
Yeah, the new
Shane,
spuds.
Gura Meal, and thanks so much for
Thanks,
being
Shane.
with us all year, Shane. Of course, this is our last week on air, but it's been a great season.
Always good
We
fun.
learn
Great,
every
thanks.
time Shane comes in here, he brings us back. We learn so much,
We
which is
sit back
wonderful.
and just listen to
So
Shane.
delighted to be here.
Absolutely.
Delighted.
Thanks so much.
Come on,
Have a great
Shane.
summer.
All right.
Now that is